This is the old shaft here, and this is what I was talking about. This is the original shaft. The replacement shaft, they cut that keyway all the way up into this journal. So I put a speedy sleeve on there to help that out. And this is what I was talking about, how it was all chewed up and rusted out. The threads are all gone. And all actuality, I should have sent this shaft out and had it repaired probably. And probably saved me a little bit of grief there. But then getting on down to when I took the power steering cylinder off right here, get on down in here, and I found all this grooving. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. You can see all the scoring down in there. And the other parts of the cylinder were wore out too. The pin and rack assembly was wore out in the pivot and the pin here. Had a lot of play in it. And you can see all the marks on the piston and the rings. So I got a replacement kit, and this kit, actually I had to put the cylinder together. It came in like 6 or 7 pieces, I think. And I had to get the seal kit separate for it. And when I got it, it was, the cylinder was full of chip and shavings and all that from the machining process that they never bothered to clean out, and it had a real rough finish on it. So I bought a 800 grit ball hone, polished it up a little bit, reassembled it. It went together nice. Everything seemed to fit together properly, and it bolted on great, as you can see there. I replaced all the bushings inside the sector gears here. The sector gears are original, but I put new bushings and seals in it. The control valve up here is original. It had some minor corrosion on it, and I went ahead and just polished it up and reused it. Now when I went to put this thing back together, when I took it apart, there was 3 shims here. They had 3, these are about 30 thousandths total, but they were homemade shims that came out of right here. And I didn't understand what they were for. The book doesn't show them. It doesn't even talk about any being there, and the parts breakdown doesn't even show any there. But when I went to put that steering gear assembly back in there, or the steering shaft assembly, and tightened it down, the steering wheel was pretty hard to turn. Because I didn't put these shims back in it. So I assembled the unit just like you see here. Tried to run it, and you couldn't turn it. Couldn't even move it. And so as I was taking it back apart and I loosened those 4 bolts up, the steering got a lot easier. You could spin it with 1 finger. And then that's when I realized what these shims were for. So I had some made. There's a company called Shim Shack in Ohio, I think is where they're at. I sent them a drawing I made a drawing of the shim, what the shim looked like, and sent it to them, and they cut me some shims out. I had some stainless steel ones made. And so you may need to shim this shaft right here, whatever it takes, 10, 20, 30 thousandths to get the steering wheel to move freely when you bolt it down. And I guess on these aftermarket parts, they're all made a little different. They're not all the same. And it takes a little bit of finagling to get them to work right. That's in the case with this steering shaft here. The The steering cylinder itself, you know, I was surprised at how well it went together compared to how it looked when I took it out of the box, and I really wasn't expecting much out of it, but it did go together great. These hoses, these power steering hoses to the pump, these are new. They were still available from Massey at the time. You know, it was 20 September 2021. But the old ones that I had, they had cut one end off to make them work, and they had welded on a extension tube on the end to make it work. It was just a mess, really. So I went and bought some new hoses for it, or new lines for it. I was still able to get the O-rings, the bushings, the seal. There's a bushing up here. I put new needle bearings in it. I'm still able to get all that from Massey. Now the bushings inside these covers right here, the book calls out you got to replace that cover as an assembly, but that's no longer available. So I took the sector gear bushing and cut it down and replaced the bushings in the cover with that, and that seems to work out. There's a kit for these covers right here that comes with a new screw and the seal and the nut that holds the pitman arms on through Sparex. Those seem to be okay. This adjustment screw right here on the new ones, let me grab one of these old screws. On this old screw, it's got kind of a convex head on it right there. You can see where the where it kind of touches the sector gear. This slides inside the slot in the sector gear and comes through the cap. It the new ones that came in the kit, that's a flat surface, and it comes with a little aluminum looking shim in it in the kit that goes in there to kind of shim the slack out of the bolt. I ended up getting a set of shims from McMaster-Carr. I think they were a metric size, and to take up the slack even more, because in my opinion, it wasn't enough to make up the difference there. So I think they sold an assortment kit there, and I just figured out what I needed to kind of take up as much slack as I could get out of it. And I guess time will tell on how this thing works, but it seems to work good here. So far, no leaks. Now over on this pump over here, there's a filter inside of here that's serviceable, and there's a big O-ring that goes around here. It took a couple of tries and two or three O-rings to get this cover back on to where it wouldn't leak. It was quite the ordeal, because there's a spring between the cover and the filter that keeps that filter pushed up against the body, and I ended up putting it in the vise and getting a bar clamp and holding one side down, kind of working it over, and it finally, after the third time, I finally figured it out, and so far it hasn't leaked any. But I had this cover powder coated at a local guy down here in town. It's kind of a silver mist color, or flint metallic gray color, I'm sorry. But I'm fixing to shoot some paint on this steering gear here and get it back on the tractor this weekend, I hope.